Hey, my name is Logan Bennett. I'm 25 and I live in a quiet neighborhood just outside Burlington, Vermont. I work at my uncle's auto shop fixing cars, oil changes, brake jobs, tire patches. It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills and keeps my hands busy. Most nights I come home smelling like grease and motor oil, eat whatever's left in the fridge, and fall asleep to the sound of rain on the roof. Across the street from my apartment lives Maya Whitlock. She's 24 and she's been in my life for as long as I can remember. We grew up next door to each other. She used to climb the fence between our houses to steal apples from our yard. She's the one who pulled me out of a fight in 8th grade when some kid decided to make my life miserable. She's the girl I argued with for 3 summers straight about whether Batman or Spider-Man was cooler. She's the person who always stole my hoodies and never gave them back. Her mom, Evelyn, basically raised both of us. After Maya's parents divorced when she was little, her dad moved to Boston for some big finance job. Evelyn stayed and worked 2 jobs to keep their small house. She made waffles every Sunday morning, grew flowers on the porch, and somehow remembered every kid's birthday in the neighborhood. To me, she wasn't just Maya's mom. She was the closest thing I had to a second mother. So when Evelyn went into the hospital for heart surgery, I didn't even think twice. I picked Maya up at 5 in the morning. We drove to the hospital in silence, the kind that sits heavy between 2 people who've known each other too long to need small talk. We spent the whole day in the waiting room, drinking terrible coffee from the vending machine and eating dry sandwiches. Maya kept trying to smile at the nurses. She texted relatives. She even joked that her mom would be fine because she still owed her a birthday waffle. But I saw her hand shaking when she held the paper cup. I saw the way her leg bounced nonstop. She was holding herself together with everything she had, and I knew she was close to breaking. The surgery took longer than expected. It was almost midnight when the doctor finally came out and said Evelyn had made it through the worst part, but the next 48 hours were critical. Maya nodded like she understood everything, but her eyes were empty. She didn't cry. She never did in front of people. I drove her back to my place instead of hers. Her house was dark and full of memories she wasn't ready to face. My apartment was small, messy, and smelled like old pizza and rain. Maya kicked off her shoes at the door, grabbed my gray hoodie from the back of the couch, and pulled it on like it belonged to her. It probably did, in her mind. She sat down next to me on the sofa and leaned her head against my shoulder. "I haven't slept in almost 30 hours," she mumbled. "Then sleep? I don't want to close my eyes." "Why not?" "Because when I do, I think too much." I didn't know what to say to that, so I turned the TV on low, letting the quiet murmur fill the space between us. A few minutes later, Maya shifted. She curled up sideways and rested her head on my lap. I froze. She closed her eyes and said, almost like an order, "Don't make it weird." I looked down at her. "Maya, you're literally lying on my lap right now." "Yeah, that's the definition of weird." "You're warmer than a pillow." Then she fell asleep. I sat there like a statue, afraid to move. Her hair spilled across my thigh. One of her hands rested lightly on my stomach, trusting in a way that made my chest ache. This wasn't the first time Maya had done something like this. She'd always been affectionate, linking her arm through mine when we crossed the street, stealing my jacket when she was cold, falling asleep on my shoulder during movies. And I'd always pretended it didn't mean anything. We were neighbors. We were practically family. Those were the safe words we used when we weren't brave enough to call it what it really was. The room was dark except for the faint glow of the TV. Outside, rain tapped against the window. Maya's breathing had evened out, soft and steady. I let myself look at her for a long time, the curve of her cheek, the way her eyelashes rested against her skin, the tiny scar above her eyebrow from when she fell off her bike at 10 years old. Then her phone lit up on the couch beside me. I didn't mean to look, but the screen was right there, bright in the dark room, and the message preview was impossible to miss. It was from her dad, Richard Whitlock. "If the surgery doesn't go well, I want you to come to Boston with me. You'll have a better job, a more stable life. You can't stay stuck in that old neighborhood forever just because of Logan." Below it was a draft message Maya had started typing but never sent. If I tell Logan the truth, I'll lose him. If I don't, I'll probably lose him anyway. I stopped breathing. Maya was still asleep on my lap, completely unaware that her phone had just handed me the most brutal question of my life. I stared at the screen until it went dark again, then kept staring at the black rectangle like it might give me answers. I wanted her to stay. God, I wanted her to stay so badly it hurt. I wanted her to keep climbing the fence between our houses. I wanted her to argue with me about movies until 3 in the morning. I wanted her to keep stealing my hoodies and never give them back. But what if her dad was right? What if Boston really was better for her? What if loving her meant letting her go? I sat there in the dark with Maya sleeping peacefully on my lap, and for the first time in my life I understood that silence could be its own kind of loss. Maya woke up almost an hour later. She stirred slowly, her cheek still pressed against my thigh. For a few seconds she just blinked at the dark room like she wasn't sure where she was. Then her eyes found mine and she pushed herself up, rubbing her face with the sleeve of my hoodie. "Did I fall asleep on you?" she asked, voice hoarse. "Yeah." "Did I snore?" "No." "Did I drool?" "I'll take that secret to my grave." She kicked my leg lightly, but the smile she gave me was tired, barely there. The kind of smile people wear when they're trying not to fall apart in front of someone else. I glanced at her phone, now dark on the couch beside us. The words from her dad were still burned into my head. I wanted to ask her about it. I wanted to ask if she was really thinking about Boston. I wanted to ask what the hell that draft message meant. But I didn't. Not tonight. Not when her mom was still fighting for her life 2 floors above us in the hospital. Not when Maya looked like one wrong word would shatter her. She sat up straighter, pulling my hoodie tighter around herself like armor. "Mom's gonna be okay," she said. It wasn't a statement. It was a prayer. I nodded. "She's stubborn. I think her heart is too." Maya let out a small laugh that cracked halfway through. Her eyes went glassy. She turned her face away fast, but I'd already seen it. I drove her home a little before midnight. The rain had stopped, but the streets were still slick and shiny under the streetlights. When we pulled up in front of her house, she didn't get out right away. She just sat there with her hand on the door handle, staring at the dark windows. "Logan." "Yeah?" "If I ever have to leave this place, would you be mad at me?" My chest tightened so hard I almost couldn't breathe. This was the moment. The exact moment I could tell her the truth. I could say, yes, I'd be furious. I'd be broken. "Because I love you," but the words got stuck somewhere between my heart and my mouth, and what came out instead was the safe version. "If it's what's best for you, I won't be mad." She looked at me for a long second. Something shifted in her eyes, like she'd been hoping I would say something else. Something real. "You always say the right thing," she whispered. "Is that a compliment?" "I'm not sure." Then she opened the door and stepped out into the cold night. I watched her walk up the path to her front door, the same path we'd run down 1,000 times as kids. She didn't look back. I sat in the car for a long time after she disappeared inside, staring at the yellow porch light Evelyn always left on. The same light that had guided me home more times than I could count. The thought of that light eventually going dark made my stomach turn. The next few days blurred together in the smell of antiseptic and the steady beep of heart monitors. Maya practically lived at the hospital. I brought her coffee every morning, black, 2 sugars, the way she liked it. I drove her home every evening so she could shower and change clothes. I answered texts from neighbors asking how Evelyn was doing, because Maya couldn't bring herself to type the words. Sometimes she fell asleep on my shoulder in the waiting room. Sometimes she grabbed my hand so tight when the doctor walked out that I thought she might break my fingers. Her dad, Richard, showed up on the second day. He walked into the waiting room wearing an expensive coat and shiny leather shoes, looking like he belonged in a boardroom instead of a hospital corridor in Vermont. He hugged Maya awkwardly, the kind of hug that said he wasn't used to physical comfort. Then he got straight to business. "I've spoken with the doctors," he said calmly. If things take a turn for the worse, you should prepare to come back to Boston with me. I have an apartment ready. There's a communications assistant position at my friend's firm. A fresh start. You don't need to stay trapped in this town forever. Maya went still. Dad, Mom is still here. I know, but you also have to think about your own future. I stood a few feet away pretending to read a pamphlet about heart disease I'd already read 3 times. Richard glanced at me, polite but distant. Logan, right? Thank you for being there for Maya. The way he said being there made it sound temporary, like I was just a placeholder until something better came along. I nodded. Maya looked at me like she was waiting for me to say something. I didn't. That night, she was angry. We sat on a bench in the small garden behind the hospital. The wind was cold and the leaves were wet. The streetlight made her face look pale and tired. You heard what my dad said, she said. Yeah. And you have nothing to say about it? I swallowed. I think you should do what's best for you. She laughed, but it was a bitter sound. You sound exactly like someone who doesn't want to take responsibility if I stay. Maya, this is your life. I know that. She turned to look at me, eyes sharp even through the exhaustion. But you're in it, Logan. Whether you pretend to notice or not. The words hit me right in the chest. I wanted to tell her I noticed everything. That I'd been noticing for years. That the thought of her leaving made it hard to breathe. Instead, I said the same careful thing I always said. If it's what's best for you, I won't be mad. Maya stared at me for a long moment. Then she stood up. I'm tired. I'll see you tomorrow. She walked back toward the hospital doors without looking back. I stayed on the bench long after she was gone, the cold seeping through my jacket, and realized something that made me feel sick. The worst part wasn't that I was scared of losing her. It was that I was making her think I didn't want to keep her at all. Evelyn's condition took a turn on Thursday morning. I was in the middle of changing the oil on a Honda Civic when my phone buzzed. It was Maya. Just 3 words. Come now. I didn't even finish the job. I wiped my hands on a rag, told my uncle I had an emergency, and drove to the hospital like the roads were on fire. When I walked into the waiting room, Maya was sitting in the same plastic chair she'd claimed for the last 3 days. Her face was white. Richard stood beside her with his hands in his coat pockets, looking calm in the way only people who solve problems with money can look. The doctor explained it gently but clearly. There were complications. Another surgery was necessary. The risks were significantly higher this time. Maya didn't move. She just stared at the doctor like the words were in a language she didn't understand. Richard placed a hand on her shoulder. If we need to make decisions quickly, he said, I want you to be ready to come back to Boston with me right after. I have everything set up, an apartment, a job. You don't have to stay here and let the past drag you down. I hated that phrase, the past. Like this town, her mother, and everything she'd ever known were just dead weight she needed to cut loose. Like I was part of that dead weight. But I still didn't say anything, because when I looked at Maya sitting between her father and the double doors leading to the operating room, I understood something I hadn't wanted to admit. She didn't need another person pulling her in 2 different directions right now. She needed her mother to live. Before they wheeled Evelyn into surgery, she woke up for a few minutes. Maya leaned down close to the bed, trying to smile. You have to wake up so you can yell at me for eating instant noodles for 3 days straight. Evelyn's lips curved weakly. I'll yell at Logan too. He let you do that. He's guilty by association. I tried to smile back, but it felt wrong on my face. Evelyn turned her head slightly and looked at me. Even through the exhaustion and the tubes, her eyes were still warm. Logan, she whispered. Yeah? Take care of my girl. Maya broke right there. A small, broken sound escaped her throat. Mom, don't say it like that. Evelyn reached up with a trembling hand and touched Maya's cheek. I'm not saying it because I'm giving up. I'm saying it because I know you, baby. You're good at pretending you don't need anyone. Then she looked at both of us, her gaze moving slowly between our faces. You're both good at it. Don't spend your whole life building walls around the fact that you love each other. The room went completely still. Maya didn't look at me. I didn't look at her. But we both understood. Evelyn knew. She had probably known for years. Every time Maya stole my hoodie, every time I stood on her porch after Maya had a bad day, every time the two of us grew up side by side pretending the thing between us was just friendship, her mother had seen it all along. The second surgery started at 2 in the afternoon. By evening, the doctor came out again. I knew before he opened his mouth. Maya knew too. I saw it in the way her whole body changed the second she saw his face. Richard pulled her into his arms. She didn't cry. She didn't make a sound. She just stood there like her mind hadn't caught up with what her heart already understood. Evelyn was gone. That night, Maya sat alone in the hospital room that had been her mother's for the last 4 days. The machines were quiet now. The bed was stripped. She held the soft gray scarf Evelyn always wore, running it through her fingers, over and over like she was trying to memorize the texture. I stood outside the door for a long time before I finally stepped in. Maya? She didn't turn around. Dad wants me to go to Boston after the funeral. My throat closed up. When? 3 days from now. I was quiet for too long. Maya finally looked over her shoulder at me. Her eyes were red but dry. She had cried herself out hours ago. You still have nothing to say? I wanted to say, don't go. I wanted to say it so badly my chest hurt. But looking at her in that empty room surrounded by the ghost of her mother, I felt like the cruelest person alive if I asked her to stay in a place that would only remind her of loss every single day. So I said the thing I thought was kind. Maybe you should go, just for a while. Boston could be good for you. The look she gave me was worse than anger. It was disappointment. Deep, quiet disappointment. You really think that? I just want you to have a better future. She laughed once, short and hollow. Logan, I don't need you to pick my future for me. I just need you to tell me what you actually want. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. And that silence, that cowardice, answered for me. Maya nodded slowly like she had finally accepted something she'd been hoping wasn't true. Fine, she said quietly. Then I'll go. Evelyn's funeral was held on a foggy Tuesday morning. The entire neighborhood showed up. People brought casseroles, flowers, and quiet condolences. They stood in small clusters on the lawn in front of the little white house where Evelyn had raised Maya, the same house where she had baked waffles every Sunday and remembered every kid's birthday. I stood near the back, hands in my pockets, watching Maya. She looked heartbreakingly calm in a simple black dress. Richard stood beside her in his expensive coat, one hand resting lightly on her back like he was already guiding her away from this place. I kept my distance. I didn't have the right to stand next to her. Not anymore. Not after I had spent the last week telling her to leave. After the service, Richard moved fast. He spoke to the lawyer, arranged for the house to be locked up temporarily, and told Maya she should leave before grief pulled her under. 3 days. That was all the time she had left in the only home she had ever known. The morning she was supposed to leave, it rained. A black sedan idled in front of her house, wipers moving slowly across the windshield. Richard stood by the open trunk, phone to his ear, already handling business, even on a day like this. Maya's suitcase was already packed and loaded. She stood on the porch wearing my gray hoodie, the same one she had taken the night her mother went into the hospital. Her hair was damp from the rain, and she looked smaller than I had ever seen her. I stood on the other side of the fence. The same fence she used to climb when we were kids. The same fence that had separated our worlds for 20 years. She walked over slowly, stopping just on her side of the wooden slats. I'll mail the hoodie back, she said, trying to smile. You don't have to. You only said that because you know I won't actually return it, right? Yeah. We looked at each other through the rain. Every real thing I wanted to say was stuck in my throat. Maya waited, eyes searching mine like she was giving me one last chance. I still couldn't speak. Finally, she stepped back. Goodbye, Logan. She turned and walked toward the car. I watched her open the door, watched her slide into the passenger seat, watched Richard close the trunk and get behind the wheel. The engine hummed to life. The car started moving. 1 meter, 2 meters, past the old maple tree in front of her house, past the white fence, past the porch steps where we had eaten ice cream every summer. Something inside me cracked. Not with thought, with pure instinct. I ran. Maya! The car kept going. I ran faster, shoes slipping on the wet pavement, lungs burning, heart slamming against my ribs like it was trying to break out. Maya! Through the rear window, I saw her turn. Our eyes met. For one terrible second, I thought she would just keep going. That I had waited too long. That I had lost her because I was too much of a coward to say the words when they mattered. I reached the car and slammed my hand against the back window. Maya, stop! The brakes screeched. Richard looked annoyed in the rearview mirror. Maya opened her door and stepped out into the rain, hair already plastered to her face. Logan, what the hell are you doing? I was breathing hard, soaked to the bone, shaking. I can't let you leave like this. She stared at me, lips trembling. You're the one who told me to go. I lied. Maya went completely still. I stepped closer, voice cracking. I lied because I was scared that if I asked you to stay, I'd be selfish. I was scared that Boston really would give you a better life. I was scared that I'm just some guy who fixes cars in a small apartment while your dad can give you everything I can't. I swallowed hard, rain running down my face. But the truth is, I want you to stay. Not because you can't live without me. Because I don't want to spend the rest of my life in this neighborhood knowing I let the person I love most walk away just because I was too afraid to speak. Tears mixed with rain on Maya's cheeks. Logan. I kept going. I couldn't stop now. I love you. I've loved you for so long, I don't even remember when it started. Maybe it was the summer you split your last ice cream with me. Maybe it was the day you fought that kid who was bullying me in 8th grade. Maybe it was every single time you stole my hoodie and I pretended it didn't make me stupidly happy. Maya let out a broken laugh through her tears. You're such an idiot. I know. Such a fucking idiot. I know. I looked at her, rain pouring down both of us, and said the only thing that mattered. Don't go because of me. But don't go because your dad thinks it's the only future you deserve either. Stay if your heart is still here. Stay with me if you want to, not as neighbors, not as old friends, not as two people who keep getting close and then pretending there's nothing there. I held out my hand. Maya, stay with me. She looked at my hand. Then she looked back at the car where her father was watching us through the windshield. Richard stepped out, rain hitting his expensive coat. Maya, you don't have to decide right now. For the first time, she turned to him with a clear, steady voice. I already have. Richard froze. Maya turned back to me, placed her hand in mine, and said the words I had been terrified I would never hear. I'm staying. I couldn't breathe. She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around me in the middle of the street, rain soaking through both of us. There was no movie kiss, no dramatic music, just Maya crying into my shoulder while I held her like I was trying to pull back every year we had wasted being afraid. After a long moment, she pulled back just enough to look at me. You still owe me a real date, by the way. I laughed, the sound rough and wet. I was getting to that. No, say it now. I wiped rain from my face and stood up straighter, trying to keep whatever dignity I had left after chasing a car down the street. Maya Whitlock, will you go on an actual date with me? No pretending we're just friends. No accidental closeness. No half feelings we hide behind the word neighbor. Just you, me, and the very late realization that I'm in love with you. Maya looked at me for a long second. Then she nodded. Yes. I had to ask again because I still couldn't believe it. Yes? She smiled through her tears. Yes, Logan. I'll go on a date with you. When I kissed her this time, nothing about it was an accident. 1 month later, the neighborhood looked exactly the same. The maple tree in front of Maya's house still dropped leaves onto my driveway. The fence between our yards was still low enough that she could climb over if she wanted to, though these days she usually just used the front door like a normal person. Evelyn's house still felt too quiet, but it wasn't empty anymore. Maya was still grieving. Some mornings I would find her standing in the kitchen staring at her mother's handwritten waffle recipe, like she was trying to memorize every loop of the handwriting. Some evenings she sat on the porch wearing one of Evelyn's old cardigans, quiet in a way that made my chest ache. Grief doesn't disappear just because love shows up. But love makes the grief a little less cold. She never moved to Boston. Richard was disappointed at first, but after a few long phone calls, he started to understand. His daughter wasn't staying because she was scared of change. She was staying because this was where her mother lived, where her childhood lived, and where she had finally chosen to build something real. He still called every Sunday. Sometimes he sent money to help fix up the house. Maya only accepted a little of it. She said she wanted to stand on her own 2 feet. As for me, I was still Logan. Still the guy who fixed cars and drank cheap coffee and argued with Maya about which movie had the worst ending in cinematic history. The only difference was that now when she curled up next to me on the couch and rested her head on my shoulder, I could kiss the top of her head without pretending it was just something neighbors did. She still stole my hoodies. One night, I came out of the bedroom and found her curled up on my couch wearing the gray one she had taken the night her mother went into the hospital. She was watching a movie I hated, legs tucked under her, hair messy. "That's my hoodie," I said from the doorway. She didn't even look up. "Prove it." "It smells like my laundry detergent. Now it smells like me." "You just admitted to theft?" "No, I'm redistributing assets within the relationship." I sat down beside her. "You'd lose that argument in court." "You'd testify for me." "I'm the victim. You're my boyfriend. You have to be on my side." The word boyfriend still made something flip in my chest every time she said it. Maya noticed. She turned and gave me that soft smile she only used when she knew she had me. "Still not used to it?" I looked at her for a long moment. "Not that I'm not used to it. I just really like hearing it." Her smile faded into something quieter. She leaned her head against my shoulder. "Mom would have teased us so much." I took her hand. "She was already teasing us. We were just too busy pretending not to notice." Maya laughed, but her eyes were glassy. I didn't try to wipe the tears away, I just held her hand tighter. Because I finally understood something important. Loving someone doesn't mean protecting them from pain. It means being there when the pain comes, without running, without pretending, without saying noble things to hide your own fear. Our first real date happened a week after she decided to stay. We went to the diner at the end of the street, the same one we had been going to since we were 16. Nothing fancy, nothing perfect. Maya spilled marinara sauce on my sleeve. I ordered the one dish she hated just to watch her get dramatic about it. She stole my fries and called it emotional tax. But when we walked out afterwards, she reached for my hand right there on the sidewalk in front of half the neighborhood. No more pretending we were just friends. No more accidental closeness followed by awkward silence. No more feelings we hid behind safe words. Just us. Two people who had spent years building their lives around the lie that they didn't love each other, only to realize the most painful thing wasn't loving the wrong person. It was wasting so many years being too afraid to tell the truth. If anyone ever asked me where love began, I wouldn't say it started with our first kiss or our first official date. I would tell them it started with a low fence between two houses, a girl who never gave back the hoodies she stole, a mother who saw everything, and a car I ran after with everything I had. Because sometimes the most beautiful love stories aren't the ones that arrive new. They're the ones that have been there all along, just waiting for someone brave enough to finally say its name.